welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Bree, and on this channel, I like to talk about my experience with budgeting as well as other personal finance topics. And in this video, I'm gonna be talking about the one budgeting app that changed everything and truly helped me to reach my financial goals over the last 3 years. And so in this video, I'm gonna be covering the history of what exactly got me started in budgeting, and then go into the struggles that I was facing during that journey, which led me to this app that has really changed everything for me for the better. So taking it back about 7 or so years ago when I was 24, I was working as a full-time barista, going to school as a full-time student, and my daughter was about 1.5 years old. And during this time, I really wanted to get her enrolled into a daycare so that I could continue working and going to school and being able to balance all of it. And in order to make that happen, I really had to get clear about what was coming in and what was going out and how I was gonna make sure that I was gonna be able to make everything work. So at the time, what I ended up doing, which is actually very similar to what you may know today as the cash envelope system, was stuffing Ziploc bags. Now, back then, I had no idea what the cash envelope system was. Kind of wish I did so I didn't look crazy having a bunch of Ziploc bags stuffed in a drawer, but that was where I started when it came to budgeting. So back then, my process used to be that every time I would get paid, I would go to the ATM, pull out my paycheck, and stuff my Ziploc bags. And so back then I had very simple categories. It really was just daycare, groceries, my daughter's needs, a long-term savings, and then just some free spending for us to do throughout the month. And that system worked great at that time. Like I said, every time I got paid, I would stuff my bags, and every month that I had to pay for daycare, I always had the money. And then because everything was split out into categories, I always had money to cover my daughter's needs or to do grocery shopping and things like that. Now, fast forward about a year later, I finally got my first job out of college. And with that came more money coming in. And so it no longer made sense for me to go to the bank anymore and pull out that money now that I was earning a little bit more. And it put me back into this position of managing my money. Now, I was putting together a budget at this time, and I was using like an Excel spreadsheet to kind of track my spending and make sure I was hitting my targets and just categorizing things in general. But honestly, it was such a mess. I struggled for years with this system, especially because it was really hard for me mid-month to kind of check in and see where I was, you know, maybe how much I'd spent on groceries and where was I maybe on some free spending categories and things like that. And it really was just an overall challenge. And it took me about 3 years trying to work with a spreadsheet, and honestly, that just not being enough, I stumbled across this app, and it is called YNAB, or You Need a Budget. Now, this has been around for quite some time. It actually started, I believe, as like a website. But for me at that time, I really just wanted an app that I could pull out when I was out and about and kind of assess where I was. Now, I think I had tried the YNAB method years prior, and it just didn't click for me. But because I was in desperate need of a system that actually worked for me in order to manage my money a lot more efficiently, I had made it a New Year's goal back in 2022 to do whatever was possible to understand this app. And after a few weeks in it, it finally clicked for me. It was basically digital envelopes. So here I was able to go back to my Ziploc system of things, of stuffing my Ziploc bags and pulling out money when I needed to pay for things, and then moving money around as I needed, but it was all done digitally. And so honestly, this is the app that has really changed everything for me, and these are a few things that I really like about it. The first thing is being able to categorize my money. So I no longer look at my checking account balance. I no longer look at my savings account or my credit cards, not so much because I don't want to know what's going on in there, but because those balances no longer tell me a story about where my money is. So for example, when it comes to my checking account, I have a dollar figure of what's in there, and I do typically like to keep at least a month's worth of expenses in there just for the monthly activities that are occurring. But other than that, everything is in the YNAB app. I'm able to open it up and it breaks down what is in my checking account into individual categories so that I know how much money I have, but how exactly it breaks down and where I am for the month. And with categorizing my money, I'm also able to move things around. It just works so much better. So for example, if I budget $40 a month for home goods, but maybe this month was a little bit higher, I can move money from my gas category to my home goods category to cover any kind of overspending that I've done for the month. I also love that now I know exactly where I stand at any point in the month. Previous to this, I had to do some really good tracking exercises and some math in the middle of the month to figure out things like, okay, how much do I have left for groceries? Where does that leave me? Am I on track or am I over budget, midway through the month? But with YNAB, I can literally open my app and take a look at, okay, I have X amount of dollars available, or maybe I'm doing some overspending, so I need to pull from other categories. So being able to have a full picture, and actually that was the event that really made me want to get an app, was I was actually out and about and I was buying some dog food and I wanted to buy my dog a dog toy. And I was like, well, hold on, where exactly am I at this month? Like, how much money do I actually have that I can allocate towards this purchase? And I have no idea, but ever since getting YNAB and making sure that I do some of the weekly tidying throughout the month, whether that's like categorizing transactions or moving things around, I can now get a really clear picture. So now if I'm out and about and maybe I want to buy my dog a dog toy, I can take a look and say, oh, you know what? I have some money available and this is exactly how much I have available. I can go ahead and proceed with this purchase. Next is that I love actually having all of the data available to me. So now that I'm 3 years into using the app, I can actually look at historical information. For example, I recently wanted to see how much I spend on vacations on average. And over the last 3 years, I was able to see what that number was and then kind of assess like how I felt about that. And what I love about looking at things historically is, for example, in my last video, I did a 6-month spending review and I was able to export all of the spending that I've done in the last 6 months and get an actual report of where my money is going and how much I've spent in every single category over the last 6 months. I find that that information is so valuable, especially when it comes to making a budget that is forward-looking and assessing whether or not I need to increase certain categories or determine if there's some improvement that I need to make on my spending behaviors. Lastly, they do have a couple of reports that are available. If you use the web-based version, you get a little bit better picture of like your income versus your expenses, and you actually get like little graph charts that you can get created to see your spending broken down by category. But one of my favorites is the net worth tracker. So every month it basically takes a snapshot of your finances and it'll have your assets and your liabilities depending on what you're tracking in there. For example, I'm not tracking anything like what my car is worth, but I do have all of my financial accounts in there and my credit cards. So I can actually watch my net worth growing as I save money, as I pay down debt like my car loan. And it has been really cool to see how far I've come over the last 3 years with that chart alone. It has been so encouraging. And so finally, that is my favorite budgeting app that I use that has seriously changed everything for me for the better. Let me know in the comments if you've tried it out for yourself and whether or not you're using it, or if there's a different tracking tool that you really enjoy when it comes to budgeting. And then if you have any questions about it or would like me to cover any specific topics about it in the future videos, let me know. I would love to do that. Thanks so much for joining. See you next time.